everyone. This is Bill Griffin. Welcome to Different Take Podcast. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Really appreciate you watching. This episode is an extenuation of the last episode I did, which has to do with the Gwinnett County public school system. So at a board meeting on November 17th, 2022, I'm going to show you 6 clips total, 3 addressing the board. I believe it's 2 parents, 1 teacher, and then the 3 board members and response. And the topic is restorative discipline practices, which is a guideline that the board passed, and it changed some of the policy too. They don't like to admit that, but it changed some of the implementation policy. But the guideline itself is utter madness. And the parents, teachers, students are all suffering because of this board. And the board really doesn't get it. So I'll start with this clip where a lady is, I don't know her name, but she's addressing the board.
Good evening. If I wanted to ruin a great school like GCPS, I would gaslight groups of people into hating each other. I would divide and conquer, promoting only people's differences and not what they have in common. I would devalue parents by calling them caregivers until kids see teachers more as parents and their parents as simply caregivers. I would shut down parents, labeling them domestic terrorists, limiting opportunities for them to speak in meetings and make them compete with children to be heard. I would give children laptops and limit their personal devices. I would use the laptops to collect data that I would sell to the highest bidder. I would close alternative schools, putting at-risk kids into mainstream, creating very useful chaos. I would ignore victims in our schools, their rights, their safety, focusing on the rights of the aggressor because they have needs. I would ignore bullying and the desperate attempts by victims to protect themselves, and I would take away consequences and ignore the laws. I would hire a consulting firm I know personally to convince everyone we need expensive leader positions, then I would fill them with my friends. I would frustrate teachers and parents with wordy emails that say nothing, more paperwork, training, and fake solutions. I would take authority away from individual schools, and I would indoctrinate the rest of the staff, convincing them that I know best. Any disagreeing staff will be pushed out the door and replaced with inexperienced hires until what schools used to look like is completely forgotten. I would limit the power of SROs, keeping them as simple hall monitors and useful scapegoats. I would teach kids that gender confusion is normal and it makes someone special until every child becomes confused and they want to be special too. I would convince children they all have the answers and adults are supposed to listen to them and not the other way around. I would empower the egos of children until their disrespect takes over the schools with no consequence. I would teach sex has nothing to do with relationships, abstinence is old-fashioned, all STDs are curable, and sex has no consequences. I would bring education down to the lowest common denominator by using curriculums that are ineffective, unproven, and don't work. I would create outreach from the school into the community and then into the children's homes until parents had no privacy or power left. I would convince people that happiness is the only normal emotion and any other emotion is a mental illness. I would bring in therapists and social workers in the name of mental health to help control parents. I would creatively hide bad data and only promote what looks good. I would manipulate community organizations to steer my agenda and then blame the bad implementation for my policy's failures and convince everyone that chaos symbolizes change. I would blame gun violence on parents, promote more gun laws, convincing people that criminals would absolutely follow stricter laws.
This next clip is a teacher who's talking about the same, with the struggles the teachers are going through with this new policy.
I am also a home-based instructor with the Oakland Meadow School. I'm telling you all of this so that you know the love that I have for my students. I'm in my 10th year of teaching at Gwinnett County, with this being the most challenging so far. With the addition of so many new initiatives, the daily struggle is completely exhausting at every level and is taking a serious toll on our teachers. While restorative practices are a great initiative, the implementation with the new behavior code of conduct has had dire consequences and put teachers and students at risk. Teachers and counselors are being asked to spend an enormous amount of time and energy focusing on the very small group of students that are causing the most disruptions, and we are not equipped to deal with the threats of gang violence. In years past, these students would have already been at the Give Center or served by a home-based teacher like myself. Instead, the school culture has been hijacked and leaves many teachers wanting to leave the profession. The strain is not sustainable nor healthy. There's anxiety at every school, at every class change, because you never know where there will be a fight. The disrespect and violence is the norm. A shooting that occurred at one of my students' homes on the last DLD was not even reported in the news. Are we really becoming that numb to the violence? Allowing this small group of students to be served by the Give Center and home-based teachers like myself serves as an integral part of the intervention process, as opposed to being punitive. We love these kids and provide support that their homeschool cannot. One size does not fit all, and the current approach creates an undercurrent that says all kids are the same, so what's wrong with our teachers? After reflecting on the percentages reported at the last board meeting regarding discipline action over the past 4 years, the percentages of students going to tribunal was a very small number of students given the size of our county, being approximately 250 prior to this year versus the 0.02% reported, which is only 36 students this year. This is not a realistic for the size of the Gwinnett County with 180,000 students. The decrease in the number of students reported as receiving disciplinary action is not reflective of the reality of the infractions because no AWOL or tardies are being reported. These are just the most severe cases. When students are not in class, they don't receive the instruction and support they need, and the idle time leads to getting in trouble. The students are now taking the violence to the community, and then they just return to the classroom. The magnitude of this issue is going to take something of equal size, such as a community town hall with all stakeholders, especially parents. While I have no desire to leave GCPS, I truly believe that God has put me here in this place at this time as an advocate for everyone's safety and well-being. We are surviving because of the support of our administration, SROs, our coworkers, and the vast majority of students. As my co-department chair said to you last month, why would people come to GCPS and why would they stay?
I always think it's interesting when a teacher would address the school board because that is it's a much bolder thing to do than I think a parent, because they're coming out and speaking basically against the administration of the school. And so they really have to see that things are going sideways, in my opinion, to do that. It's against, in some ways, their self-interest. So you have to take them pretty seriously. I disagree with this teacher in that restorative practices could be a good thing. Even in a perfect world, it can't be a good thing. It will never work. But at any rate, and she's basically buttressing my point, explaining what's going on with the uptick in violence and fear and so forth and so on. So this is a parent who details a lot of incidents, and I know this is kind of lengthy, but it's if you live in Gwinnett County in particular, you might want to listen to this.
Good evening. I'd like to start by reading a quote. Some people might say we're being soft on discipline, and I would contend we're actually taking a different approach. Does that sound familiar? It should. That was given by Superintendent Watts to CBS 46 in August. Since that time, August 11th, the fight at Berkmar High School with a report of a weapon. 8:23, a gun found on a student at Discovery. 8:26, gun found in Archer High School. 30 fights in one day at South Gwinnett, police were called. 9:13, gun found on a student at Norcross High School. 9:16, gun found at Archer High School football game. 9:19, violent threat found written on the bathroom wall at Brookwood, causing a lockdown. 9:19, the same day, over 10 fights at Norcross High School. 10:21, gun fired on Shiloh High School campus. 10:25, student shot and killed just off Norcross High School campus. 10:26, Brookwood High School put on lockdown due to threat of a gun. 10:31, student cut with a box cutter at Grayson High School. If you're counting, that's 7 gun incidents, and it's only November. 32% increase in fights and 26% increase in weapons found over this period last year. You named this new approach restorative disciplinary strategies. Teachers and parents have another name for it. It's called chaos. How do you feel this different approach is working? Like, seriously, do you think this is working well? How many children have to be hurt or worse before this board is willing to swallow its pride and admit that this experiment on discipline is failing the students of Gwinnett? Each of you sits here in a position of power, and that power comes from the taxpayers in this county, and they're not happy with what's happening here. Kids understand two things really, really well. They understand discipline and weakness. Which one are you? How do you think the students view the administrators of the schools that you have hamstrung with your discipline policies? Are they disciplinarians or are they weak? Your policies are trying to have teachers and administrators make friends with the students. That is not their job or their role. It is not productive to the students' long-term success in society. My daughter, Norcross High School, she told me a story. She said, "Dad, there's almost a fight every day at school. And in the beginning, everybody ran to watch the fight. And now they all run away. Do you know why they run away? I bet you do." She also told me a story about when there was a lockdown, a teacher sitting at the desk sobbing. Those two things are fear, and it is running rampant throughout the county. You can change that. Every one of you here has the opportunity to get rid of this policy and put things back where they belong.
So these three speakers aren't alone. There is a parade of people that have come before the board. I'm sure the board have talked to a lot of people off camera, and I'm sure they've gotten a ton of emails because the violence that they've had, the number of fights that they've reported, and it just goes on and on and on. It's a disaster. And this is, the board still, if you will, you're going to see here, they still stick to the policy. This is Karen Watkins. She's a school board member. I think she's been here 2 years, maybe. And I don't want to make too personal with her. She actually owns some. She has some regret about passing this policy, but there won't be any U-turn. This is what she has to say.
Because they believe in the policy as well, they went for it and tried. But I think we too have a shared responsibility here, us as a board, and really listening and try to listen to the call of we might not be ready to do this by the beginning of the school year. So in hindsight, of course, I can say, I wish I could have held back a little and then approved the policy and not voted on it at that point in time and just held on to it until we were staffed up, until we were able to support the school system to implement it effectively. Dr. Watts made an example of, he said, as we were going through this, he said, to train one individual for one component of this, it could take 30 hours. Now, if that's a teacher, just for one component of restorative practice, if that was a teacher, that would take time out of the school day. It has to be something that has to be fully thought out, and it could possibly take up to a year to actually fully implement. But I will say this, I still support this policy because I think we can do this. We can actually bring the fairness, the restorative, everything that we have, we want.
First off, when she says the administration supported it, I don't think that's altogether true. I think that she thinks that the administration supported it, but they probably, you hear what you want to hear. I think that she falls in this category. To her credit, as I said, she expresses some regret, but she admits that no mistake was made. Everybody's just doing their best, and this is really a super policy, and there won't be any turning back on her end. She really believes that teachers can become psychologists, and she believes that principals and teachers shouldn't have the wherewithal to impose discipline as they see fit. Teachers come to school to educate your children. As a parent, that's what I want teachers to do. I don't want them counseling. I mean, I don't have no problem with them having a positive impact on a child's life. But there's a point where they can't help them. They don't have the training or the professional ability. Karen Watkins thinks you can throw a few hours of training at all these teachers and everything's going to be hunky-dory. No. This is what they're missing, is the situation was pretty bad. It had to be pretty bad before they lowered the standards. In other words, the standards of behavior with the students was too low. Now you went in and lowered it further. So what do you expect will happen? And that's the reason this is such a complete and total disaster. And they're not listening. This lady is not listening. This is Steve Knudsen, another board member. He talks about the stick and the carrot.
We approved a opportunity to do things a little bit differently. We did not remove consequences. JCDI remained primarily intact with no change to consequences. But we approved a time frame for implementation. The word picture I want to use this evening is that of a carrot and a stick. You talk about moving an animal, and there's two different ways to do this. And people have talked to us about too much stick. I get that. Okay, so maybe there's an opportunity. But what we did was we took the stick away without training our staff and without giving them the opportunity to learn what they needed to do to provide the carrot. And so what we have is a mess. MTSS resources have been approved. Additional support has been approved. But we didn't give our people the chance to train and learn on how to apply it. Somewhere in our implementation, we went horribly awry, and that needs to change.
So he first says there's too much, people are saying there's too much stick, and I get that. Do you? How do you know there was too much stick? Newsflash, children misbehave, teenagers misbehave. And discipline is sometimes obviously necessary, and the parents will discipline their children if they know what the situation is, even if the school will not do it. He also says something kind of curious. He says, well, we have to provide the carrot, and the carrot is a lot of more counseling. Things like your children participating in peer mediation. I would tell my child not to get involved in such a thing. This is not the place, this is not what schools do, is deal with emotional needs that's not their place. They shouldn't have anything to do with that. There's nothing wrong with being positive. A place to go to school, of course, you want that. But if your child has some emotional problems, you'd want them to get professional help. And these punishments are often, if not imposed, are doing the student a disservice. I just don't think Mr. Knudsen gets it. I don't think Karen Watson gets it. You lowered standards that were already too low. You don't make any claim that the standards were high enough when you say, I get that, when you talk about the stick. This is Therese Johnson. She is she expresses Marxist ideology, the woke ideology, very much in line with Marxist beliefs.
Board members and governance team members, we can share our perspectives. We were addressing disparate treatment. We were addressing disproportionality and discipline related to Black and brown students. There was an overrepresentation of those numbers in every category. In addressing that, we created a policy, and really, again, the consequences did not change. It was more around focusing on the interventions and asking the question, why? And so when we ask the question, why is this child coming to school late? Why is this child fighting? Why is this child? Then we are trying to get a root cause analysis so that we can stop the behavior and provide the student with appropriate interventions.
That's not your job. That's not your job to raise children. There's parental responsibility, and then there's this responsibility of the school. There is no price to pay for any mistakes the school makes in rearing your children. She's saying, turn your children over us, we'll take care of the rest. This is pure Marxist ideology. There's also complete avoidance. If you look at her words that she said, she says a lot of words. She does a lot of TikTok videos, a lot of Facebook posts. She's a bit of a windbag. She talks at these meetings for a long time and doesn't really say much sometimes, but she never talks about fairness. She never talks about that. She does not really, in my opinion, she does not care whether this policy is, but prior to changing the policy, whether the standards are too low. I don't think that ever occurred to her. I think the only thing she cares about is, well, not the only thing, but her tool to get what she wants to, get her ideology imposed. And the rest of the board is very happy to go along with her, strangely, is that she talks about disparate outcomes, in her words, disproportionality. She doesn't talk about fairness. That doesn't mean anything. So this is where you're at with the school board. They're not going to change anything. You need to do the best you can, but you got to change the board out. You got to change the, hopefully the principals will step up and and the administration will step up and impose the discipline that they know is necessary, but you got to get rid of the superintendent. He's a joke. This was an absolute failure, and they don't even get it. They see a parade of parents, teachers, students come up telling them, hey, you got a big problem here, and they're completely blowing them off, completely oblivious. Hopefully the legislature will do something for you with school choice. If you got kids in school in the system, I highly recommend you get them out if you have the wherewithal to do that. And if you don't, just try to get through the best way you can. But you got to get rid of the school board. You got to get rid of the superintendent. And these policies just won't work. It's a manifestation of woke ideology getting into the school system, and people can't see the forest for the trees. That's what's causing the problem. Your baseline of behavior was too low to start with, and you just lowered it. So that's my episode today. I hope you got something out of it. Appreciate you watching. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment if you like the content. Thank you.